little bit about Rob. He's amassed an incredible following as an industry thought leader on a lot of social networks, obviously LinkedIn, etc. He runs his own agency. They've had a 50% growth year after year since he founded it in 2019. So it's quite rapid acceleration there. And he also does a couple of things outside of work. Amongst being a dad and a husband, he is in the process of developing a video game right now in spare time. He also paints. I have one of his oil paintings randomly in my house, which is a completely random story. And there's a lot of other components to what he does. But yeah, please join me in welcoming Rob as our next speaker this morning. There'll be a little bit of time at the end for Q&A, and obviously we've got one session after that before the morning break. Rob, thank you.
Okay. Well, here's the good news. This is the most complicated slide I have right here, so that's good. I'm excited to talk about culture. This is really good. But first, I'm going to take it back to yesterday. At 4:37 a.m., I was leaving from Greenville. I had to go to Toronto last minute, and I bumped into a colleague of mine. I just moved from Greenville from California, so I got there just in time for the hurricane. That's a presentation for nobody later on that one. But I was pretty groggy and I didn't expect it, but I ran into a colleague and a client, a previous client of mine there randomly, and I was kind of just waking up and figuring it out. We started talking about a little bit what we're going to talk about today, and he was telling me a little bit about a story, so I kind of worked that right into these slides last night. What he was talking about was practice development team that he's got and their team's got. They've sunk a lot of money and investment into this because obviously if the practices they're working with can sell more products, then obviously it's a win for everyone. It's an excellent idea. It's a great potential driver to increase sales, expand the market, and grow. You basically, when you look at a plan like this and you want to assess, like, is this going to work? How's this going to work? Can we grow the market? Can a rising tide raise all ships? That was the aspiration of this idea. The reality of it is there's a ton of indirect overhead that's causing a lot of stress, particularly when numbers are down, wallets are getting tighter, dollars need to stretch further. There's very inconsistent reciprocation from the practices. So some will do what is being advised and take some of that advice, and some will ignore it and still blame everyone else for it. So they're struggling with that. And it's very ambiguous on how to optimize a program like this. And so, okay, the next step usually that people will go to is, well, then how do we fix this, right? Because it's a good idea and we need to make this work. And so do we start paying for this to have more value in, to show that there's more value? Should it be free? Do they not value the development because of that? Should we do and conduct more research, which they actually did, and they found that practices were not acting as fast as they could or as fast as they thought they were to convert new patients. Should they increase the frequency and the touch points of all of this? This is not the point of today's presentation, because the answer is who knows, right? That's what's really hard about this. We're not going to solve for this right now, but this is the perfect example of a very common challenge of implementing new ideas in your company and in your culture. And that's what this is. Like, a new idea is an uncut gem. There's something really valuable about it, and I know that everybody in this room and watching has them and have had them and or have known other people that have great ideas, potentially great ideas, right? But it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of work to turn that into something of great value. And that's what we're talking about today. The real challenge is not in our strategies, it is in our culture. And the culture being a monster that's really hard to steer sometimes, particularly the larger the business that you're in. That's why a lot of people move sometimes from the big companies down to the small companies, because you have a lot more control over your culture then, right? And there's a real hidden disconnect between the things that we plan and what our organization actually supports us to do. Despite saying that they support. Everybody wants an innovative marketer. Everybody wants an innovative person at their team, but nobody wants to fail. and that was a big part of my presentation last year. It's like, you can innovate all you want, just don't fail. And it's like, well, that doesn't work, right? That's why, like, Elon blew up 3 rockets, right, before they figured out how to get it just off the ground. It takes a lot of effort and time, and we can't risk that in this industry. So what I call the unholy trinity of change management is very common. Maybe you guys have some of this in your, with your teams right now, right? Silos in politics, perhaps the most insidious, the most volatile, the most dangerous in any company. And the larger the company is, the more diverse the company is, all of those things, the more exponentially the chances of this happening are. It's a really tough one to cover. Resistance to change is also understandable, right? Change is scary. Change is risky. We don't have that opportunity here. Everybody's busy. Everybody's way too busy to take on a new uncut gem idea. And so you have the idea, and sometimes you say to a few people, maybe you even start pushing it a little bit, it doesn't go. Maybe you know somebody that has championed an amazing idea, and they've even implemented it, right? It could be anything. It could even be OKRs. It could be whatever that is in your company. And then they leave. And it's just poof, it's gone. Sometimes millions of dollars, like in hours or weeks or even years of initiatives just vaporize because their champion left the company. So we're talking about, how do you make a sticky idea? How can you work with compliance, which is perhaps the most risk-averse of all? Yeah, this slide scares me, right? It's very common. It's very dangerous, right, for what you've got. This is the mountain ahead of you, but on the other side of that is exactly what this entire conference is about. It's about improving customer experience. And it's on the other side of this mountain. And we're going to talk about a little bit, broadly speaking, how can we tackle that, right? How do we face this? Challenge being, if we're looking at this honestly, the risk just does not equal the reward, right? This is why you don't answer everyone that messages you on LinkedIn, right? It's like, maybe someone in there can change your life, but the chances are pretty slim. So you don't have time to vet every idea. You don't have time to try everything. It's the people that stand out that are going to cut through all the noise, and I think that is you guys. You're here. You're here because you want to transform. You want to change and you want to improve parts of your business. You want to help more customers. You want to help more people. So yeah, there's the risk, right? Okay, so if we do your idea, it's going to add complexity. We don't know how to do it. It hasn't been done before, potentially. It's going to take a lot of attention. It's going to take a lot of energy, effort, and time. Who's got a lot of extra of all those things? No one. That's the risk, right? And the reward is, hey, it might work. I believe it's going to work. So yeah, and that's why 99% of these ideas don't go anywhere. But the 1% that do change everything. You know, here's an example. AI, right? Implement AI, and then everyone's on their yachts, right? Let's party. Like, that's it. AI, question mark, question mark, question mark, profit, right? If only, right? Like, for some people, AI has pushed them backwards. And I'm not advocating against it. It works for some, but it needs a champion. It needs groundwork. It needs framework. It needs all of these things to actually just get it off the ground and moving and teach a team how to use it. You don't just plug and play. And so what I want to hammer home today, well, I don't need to hammer it, I'll just ease it in today, is that we tend to approach new ideas via strategy. Here's the strategy, here's the thought process, here's what we need to do. And that's not the most efficient way at this phase of an idea to get it to be sticky, okay? The answer is culture. And without the right culture, our strategies do not stand a chance. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture is emotional, strategy is rational. And it takes emotion to pull somebody in and capture their attention long enough. It takes emotion to realize that, no, we can't do that, is just the beginning of a conversation, not the end of one. It takes something passionate, and it takes a belief and a conviction in what you're trying to do and how you're trying to help people to do it. And it's hard. It's really hard. But the good news is that culture does start with you. And it starts with your team, your immediate team around you. And whatever level of the organization you're at, admittedly, it's a lot harder in the middle to lower levels, without question. Okay? We're going to talk about leadership buy-in on a later slide here. But the catalyst starts here. And I think there's people here already that are doing this, right? Clearly. You have your team. That's what you can control, right? It's like, there's your boundaries. There's your box. There's your crew. You get to vet them. You get to work with them. You get to talk to them and communicate them, get them aligned. And that helps bring everything to life, slowly and surely. But the cool thing is that you can break this on. You can pull on more people. You can start adding to this to create something that sticks and becomes ingrained in your company. And it's really, really hard, right? You got to package it. That's the first thing you got to do. A lot of people skip this step. They just start talking, they start going out. If you don't think about how you're packaging your idea, then it can die so fast. You ever tell a loved one about a great idea, something you're going to change in your life? It's like, how does that go normally? It's like, everyone's going to point out how it can fail. They think they're helping, but they're not, right? So you got to put some thought around how you're going to package this idea. How are you going to transform something? And my advice here is to simplify that as much as you can. What is the absolute minimal viable product? What's the first tiny baby step towards this idea? Because that's the most digestible for other people to take on. Then you got to sell it, right? So you got to be a marketer too on top of this. And this is where I'd say you need to hone in on the value. What is the end value of this, of the idea? Then you need people to adopt it, and this is where I'd say just about everything dies. All the ideas die here because they go, oh, I can't get anyone to adopt it. Nothing's working. It's not sticking. It's not happening. This is where patience is a virtue, and understanding the perspective of the mountain that you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to overcome. And then it needs to adapt, and this is really hard because this is where you let go, because other people need to take this idea and take it to the next level. It becomes their idea, and that's the only way it sticks. Otherwise, you end up in the scenario I just said where a person leaves and the whole initiative's dead. Company's gone, or all that goes to waste. Yeah, it ain't easy. It's not easy. But it's awesome when it does work. Nobody read my email. Nobody, I had the call. We went through everything. I had the 45-minute call. I went through 90 slides on how to do it. I gave them all the logins. No one logged in. No one's doing it. It's like, yeah, because everyone's busy. We got to break it down to the smallest steps. And that's what we want to talk about briefly in the second half of this today. How do we break this down? How do we simplify this even more? Well, your first and most powerful tool is going to the top. Always. If you can get the top to buy in, you've just made your life 90% easier on this idea. Because if they can not only buy in, not to just say, okay, here's a stamp, go and do that, but for them to actually understand the value and get an ally on your side, that's what empowers teams, and that's why it's not just motivating, it is contagious, and you need that. Raw ideas are not strong enough in that form to move mountains. People need to move them for you, and you need a team to do that. So you got to go to the top. If you can't, next rung, next level, it's all about how big the idea is and what you're trying to implement in building that culture out. Simon Sinek's got a great book, Start With Why. Can't recommend it enough to people if you have not read this. This just cuts right to the value of what it is that you're trying to do, right? His example is, he usually talks about PC versus Apple, right? And PC is like, well, we've got the fastest, most efficient computers, and if you do that, if you use them, then it's going to work really well, and then you're going to be efficient, and you're going to succeed, and your business is going to be great. And then Apple is just like, we're out for people that want to change the world. Right? That's their whole thing. It's like, that's the why. Forget our computers. Like, by the way, we make computers and other tech, but really, we're here for the people that want to think differently and people that want to push the envelope and make something amazing. That's the why. That's how you tap into the emotional aspect to get people on board with the idea. And then you got to understand that trust will always be more powerful than control. And what sucks about this is not every company has coworkers that you can trust. Not everybody has employees that are absolute rock stars. There's a lot of team management that has to be in place first for this to work. So you do have to temper your expectations. You do need to be patient. You do need to break down and figure out what are the blockers and what are the barriers to other people taking your idea of how to improve the customer experience, how to implement some kind of new process, how to get personalized omnichannel into your company. Whatever that is, you do have to empower people and allow them to lift up the idea for you. And then, of course, yeah, you always catch more flies with, which is such a gross analogy. You catch more flies with honey than vinegar. No one needs to catch flies. We don't need to worry about that. But the point is, you need to be a champion for this. You need to be a good communicator. That goes back to packaging this, right? But you're not going to control this, and I think that's where a lot of ideas start to fall and to crack and to flounder. You got to understand that resistance is just part of the equation. And so getting back to what we talked about with the Trinity, silos are the true kryptonite of omnichannel CX. If you're not talking and you're not communicating to other departments, then the ideas will never be sticky. They won't work. Your path is always going to require cross-functional team collaboration, without question. And the more you have, the faster it goes. I think Stephen Covey's got a great book on that, Speed of Trust, which is really big too. So how can you bridge those gaps is really the major question that you're looking for. How can you pull other people in, just one small conversation call at a time, to do it and get some kind of momentum? And again, the bigger the idea, the more time you need to give yourself to do it. But what's awesome is that when you actually get this culture right, not only will you have ideas that stick, other people will bring the gems to you as well. And that's what separates incredible companies from great companies or good companies or average companies. That's what separates incredible cultures that are fostering innovation, that are actually living what they're saying. These are the ones that say, we put patients first, and actually put patients first. Like, that's not common. I've been on the agency side for my entire career, and I want to say about 5% of companies put patients first. It's the funnel, the sales funnel. That was the best slide. That was it. From the last one. Everyone's obsessed with the funnel, understandably, because you need the funnel for your lifeblood, for your revenue, for what's going on. But you can have that and build the culture too, which is difficult. And so I'm going to give us some time to open up to some questions here. This is a broad and open discussion here. I didn't go into too much detail because the concepts they're simple in idea, but they're really difficult in practice to do. But if you embrace this, you can be an agent and a catalyst of change at your company. And you can bring these ideas. The ideas you've gotten today, the ideas you get when you see certain slides, you hear people say things, notes you take, pick one. Pick one when you leave here and take it. And that's your gem. And you can start to build from your team onward to other departments to see, is it going to stick? And be ready because, again, it's so messy. The value's unknown. Chance of success, minimal, right? But what are we waiting for? You still want to go after it because that's, on the other side of it, is transformation, is what we're all looking for. And that's it. So cheers. Thank you, as always.
Thanks, Rob. Got a minute for one or two questions, anyone? Yes, Matt. Pick the wrong side of the room.
I was just curious about your point, re-silos. I think it also touches on Wayne's comment. Do you think pharma organizations as a whole would benefit from having a chief customer office, someone that was responsible end-to-end for pulling through sales, marketing, technology, analytics? Because what we often see is well-intended ideas, but they move in different directions. Curious for your thoughts.
There's your gem right there. I love that idea. I'm for more C-level. I'm okay with that, right? If it's the right person. See, that's a great idea because potentially, if you get it, now this person needs to be charismatic, they need to be a communicator, they need to be on it all the time, they need to be highly motivated and passionate. So you got to get the right person into that role, obviously. But if you did, and that's what a company needs to be the throughput, to be the thread that's connecting, to be the one to remind people, hey, hey man, I know this is a little annoying. You got to log into this new thing that we just built. You got to do this step here, but do it. Remember the value. Remember what we have, and then can report back on KPIs. I didn't have a slide on that here, but report back to show the momentum that this thing is working. Just every little bit, step by step, would be incredible. So if a company can allocate something like that, that has the openness to talk with the HR department and figure out what is the job description and who's that person, maybe even have someone in mind, it could be transformational for you. I think it's an excellent idea for the right company.
Great question. Any final questions, comments for Rob before we traverse? Yes.
This was a really awesome session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just the nerd data person in me. How are you assessing that your culture within your agency is moving the needle in this way based on this mission?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? How are you assessing that it's working? It's like branding, How do you know your PR is working? How do you know that your brand's building? I think the best way to assess it is who's on board, right? It's a somewhat intangible thing, but you can pretty much take stock. If you got a team of 30, you could take stock of who's ignoring you and who actually understands what you're doing, who's actually helping you champion what you're doing. I think the problem that people run into is they try to tackle this alone, and they get overwhelmed, they get bitter, they fail, and they just give up, and they go, you know what, I'll just stick to what we're doing, and then that's what happens. It's very common, and I'm not knocking it. It makes a ton of sense. But the first KPI is who understands the value. And so can you articulate it, and can you get more people on board? And then from there, it's can you show the movement from it, right? Again, you need to be ready to fail a little bit, so you want to fail small, you want to fail in contained areas, especially if it's an unproven idea. That's always my favorite, when we present a new creative idea to a company, and then they're like, they go, well, show us a company that's done this before and how it worked for them. And it's like, well, that's the point. It's a new company. I can't. And so they don't have a lot of resources for that risk. So again, if you can get people online with the value, know that it's an emotional pull at the start before it's a strategic pull, but you do need both, then that's how you're going to get the momentum going. And then you can discuss with them what will be the strongest KPIs that are going to move the needle and get more people on board. That's always your N. That's always the X that you're trying to solve for. Because obviously a company that has everyone on board is an aligned company. You ever see those slides that have arrows in every direction? And it's like, this is our company right now. This is everyone in our business and their motivations. And then the slide next to it has every arrow pointing up. It's like that's exponentially faster when people align on it. But man, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of empathy and understanding to say, I'm asking you to do something more beyond your job description that you didn't ask to do, that you might not believe in, and take a risk on me. Yikes. But again, those are the people that change the entire industry when they succeed.
Fantastic. Wonderful talk. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, everyone.
Really appreciate it. Thank